I never meant to notice her the way I did. It started as something casual, a nod over the fence, a polite wave when she carried in groceries, the kind of neighborly rhythm that doesn't require much thought. But then one afternoon, I heard her laugh, low, unhurried, the kind that comes from someone who doesn't bother to impress anymore. It slipped through the open window like sunlight that overstays its welcome. I was changing the oil on my old Honda, hands black with grease, radio murmuring in the background. She called over, asking if I knew anything about temperamental washing machines. That's how she said it, like the machine had a personality problem, not a mechanical one. Her name's Elise. Mid-40s, maybe a little older. Not the kind of woman who tries to hide it. She has this ease in how she moves, like she's long made peace with time. I remember wiping my hands on a rag, trying not to look too interested, and saying I could take a look sometime. She smiled, not a big one, but the kind that says you already are. Her place was nothing like mine. Books stacked unevenly, a lemon tree by the kitchen window, the faint smell of laundry detergent, and something floral I couldn't name. The washer was humming loudly when I got there, so we had to raise our voices a little. Maybe it just needs a new belt, I said, crouching beside it. She leaned against the counter, arms folded loosely. Or maybe it's just tired of working so hard. It wasn't the words, it was how she said them. Teasing, but not really. There was something in her tone, something that hovered between lightness and exhaustion. I looked up at her. The way she was watching me, like she was trying to figure out if I'd laugh or look away, made the room feel smaller. "I'll check the motor," I muttered, breaking the stare before it could turn into something. She brought me a glass of water a few minutes later. It left a ring on the counter. When I reached for it, our fingers brushed, just for a second, just enough to make both of us pull back at the same time. She laughed again, soft this time, like she was apologizing without saying it. "Thanks for helping," she said. "I owe you one." "You don't," I replied. But I wasn't sure who I was trying to convince. The machine started working again, or maybe I just got lucky. I said I should go, but she asked if I wanted to stay for coffee, said she had too much brewed anyway. I almost said no. I should have, but I didn't. We sat at the small round table by the window. She poured the coffee carefully, 2 cups, no cream. I told her about my job at the repair shop. She told me she used to be a photographer, though she doesn't do much of it now. Said she likes watching light instead of chasing it. There was a pause, the kind that isn't uncomfortable, but isn't safe either. Outside, wind moved through the lemon tree. She looked at it, then at me. "You ever feel like you're just pretending your life's fine?" she asked. I didn't know what to say, so I nodded. She smiled faintly. "Yeah, me too." I left soon after, but her question stayed. That night, when I tried to sleep, I kept hearing her voice, quiet, unguarded. Maybe it was just neighborly talk. Maybe I imagined the pause. But the next morning, when I saw her on her porch, coffee in hand, she looked up and caught my eye, and smiled like we'd both agreed on something we weren't supposed to. I told myself it was nothing, but I haven't stopped thinking about that smile since. It had been a week since the washing machine incident, though it sat in my head like a memory that refused to fade. I told myself I wouldn't go over again unless she asked. And then she did. Her voice came from over the fence that Saturday morning, calling my name like it wasn't a big deal. "You know anything about broken door latches?" she asked, holding a screwdriver like it was a foreign object. I grabbed my toolbox and followed her to her front door. The latch wasn't broken, just misaligned. Easy fix. But the air felt different this time, heavier somehow. The house was quieter, curtains half drawn, music playing low, some old jazz song with a scratchy trumpet. She stood beside me, arms crossed loosely, watching. "You're too young to spend your weekends fixing things for neighbors," she said, half a smile at her lips. "Guess I like fixing things," I said, keeping my eyes on the door. "It's easier than people." That made her laugh, not the open, unbothered laugh from before. This one came out smaller, as if she caught herself halfway through. "Yeah," she murmured. "I know what you mean." Up close, she looked different than I remembered. The lines around her eyes seemed deeper, her hair tied back loosely like she hadn't cared much this morning. Her hands were steady, though her thumb rubbed absently against her wrist, a small, restless movement that gave her away. You okay? I asked before I could stop myself. She glanced up, surprised. Why wouldn't I be? I don't know. You just... I trailed off, pretending to focus on the latch. She smiled, not kindly, not coldly. Just aware. You noticed too much. I didn't answer, but she wasn't wrong. I noticed the faint scent of lemon soap on her hands, the chipped blue polish on one thumbnail, the way she hesitated before saying certain words, like she was trying to measure what she gave away. When the latch finally clicked back into place, she reached out and touched my shoulder. A thank you, maybe. Her fingers stayed a fraction too long, then slipped away like she realized it. You really didn't have to, she said quietly. You've got better things to do than fix a stranger's door. You're not a stranger, I said. That made her look at me. Really look. Something flickered there, something uncertain. Then she took a small step back, like she'd remembered something she shouldn't forget. I should pay you, she said quickly. I shook my head. Don't. The word hung between us, heavier than it should have been. I packed up my tools, but she followed me to the porch. The morning light caught the edges of her hair, and for a second, she looked softer, younger, like she'd stepped out of a memory instead of a house. Thank you, she said again, voice quiet this time. You're kind. The way she said kind made it sound like something dangerous. She started to turn back inside, but stopped halfway, resting her hand on the doorframe. You ever fix something and realize it still doesn't work? I didn't know if she meant the door or herself. I wanted to ask. I didn't. She smiled faintly, eyes tired, and disappeared inside, leaving the door half open behind her. It rained the way it does when the sky can't make up its mind. Light, then heavy, then light again. I was in my garage, pretending to fix the same carburetor I'd been ignoring all week, when Elise showed up at the edge of the driveway holding a dish wrapped in foil. Thought you might not have eaten, she said. Her hair was damp, rain caught in the loose strands near her temples, and my stove still acting up. She smiled like she was making fun of herself. I smiled back because I didn't trust my voice not to sound too eager. We ended up eating in the garage, two mismatched chairs, one workbench between us, thunder low in the distance. The foil-wrapped dish turned out to be pasta, still warm, though she apologized for not seasoning it right. It was fine. It was more than fine. For a while, we just ate. The quiet wasn't uncomfortable, just fragile. Then she said, You ever notice how people disappear without really leaving? I looked up. You mean like ghosts? She shook her head. No, like the version of you someone used to know. One day they just stopped seeing it. I didn't answer. Her fork scraped against the plate, a small sound, but sharp. Outside, the rain came down harder, slanting across the open garage door. The smell of wet asphalt mixed with machine oil. She hugged her arms around herself. I wanted to offer her my jacket, but I didn't. Her phone buzzed then, once, twice. She glanced at it, but didn't pick up. The name lit up just long enough for me to catch it. Mark. She silenced it. Ex-husband, she said flatly, before I could pretend I hadn't seen. He only calls when he's drunk or lonely. Usually both. Something inside me tightened. Not jealousy, exactly. Something quieter, more dangerous. I'm sorry, I said, though I didn't know what I was apologizing for. She gave a small laugh, the kind that sounds more like a sigh. Don't be. I chose him once. That's the embarrassing part. The thunder rolled closer. For a few seconds, the light flickered, and the rain hammered the roof so loud it felt like it was happening inside us. When it softened again, she looked at me, really looked, and said, You're too young to understand what regret feels like. Try me, I said. Her eyes stayed on mine a moment too long. I saw her hand twitch, like she might reach for me. But she didn't. When the rain eased up, she stood, brushing off her jeans. You should close the garage before it floods, she said. Her tone had shifted, soft, but distant again. I followed her to the edge of the driveway. She stopped there, under the streetlight, the rain still dripping from her hair. Thank you for dinner, I said. She gave a faint smile. Don't thank me. It'll make it harder next time. Harder for what? She hesitated, as if weighing something she didn't want to name. Then she reached out, fingers grazing my sleeve, and stepped back before I could move. For pretending, she whispered. And then she was gone, walking into the rain, leaving the word hanging between us like something I wasn't sure we could keep doing. The rain hadn't stopped for 3 days. It left everything soaked, the air, the ground, even the sound of the neighborhood. She hadn't come by since that night in the garage. I told myself I was fine with it, that maybe it was better to let the quiet settle. But when her porch light stayed off past midnight, I noticed. On the 4th evening, she knocked on my door. She didn't say anything at first, just stood there, coat half-zipped, a faint tremor in her hand as she brushed away her hair. Her eyes looked different, less sure of what they were doing there. "Power's out again," she said finally. "Mind if I stay until it's back?" I stepped aside. She walked in like she was afraid of breaking something invisible between us. I lit a candle on the table. The flame moved softly between us, catching the tiredness on her face. She looked around my living room, small, half-finished things everywhere. Tools on the counter. A jacket on the floor. "This place suits you," she said quietly. "You don't seem like someone who stays anywhere long." I shrugged. "Guess I don't have anywhere else to be." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. That's both lucky and sad. For a while, neither of us spoke. The wind pushed against the windows. Somewhere outside, a tree creaked. Then she said, "You ever wonder what this is?" What is this?" she said, gesturing vaguely between us. The space, the silence, the waiting that always seemed to hang in the air. Whatever we're doing. I looked at her, really looked. The candlelight made her eyes seem softer, younger, like she'd stepped backward in time. But there was something else there too. Fear, maybe. Or guilt. "I don't know," I said. "Sometimes it feels like nothing. Sometimes it feels like too much." She nodded slowly, biting her lip. "It's not supposed to, feel like anything. Then why does it?" Her breath caught. She opened her mouth to answer, but didn't. Instead, she sat down, elbows on her knees, staring at the candle flame like it might explain something. "I told myself I was just being kind," she said, voice thin. "Helping the nice boy next door, talking to someone who listens. But now I can't tell if I'm crossing something." "You're not," I said, though I wasn't sure if it was true. She laughed quietly, the sound brittle, hollow. "You don't even know what line I mean." I didn't, but I knew that if I looked at her a second too long, we'd both find it. The silence grew again, thick, electric, unspoken. She reached out once, like she might touch my hand, then pulled back and rested her palm on the table instead. "Maybe we should stop pretending," she said finally. Her voice trembled just enough for me to notice. I wanted to ask what she meant, stop pretending what, exactly, but I couldn't. My throat felt tight, like saying anything might shatter the moment. The candle flickered, and for a second, her face looked both near and far, like someone already leaving. Then she whispered, almost to herself, "I don't remember the last time I felt seen." And somehow, that hurt more than anything she could have confessed. It had been a few days since that night. The candle, the silence, her words hanging in the air like something too fragile to touch. I hadn't seen her since. The distance felt deliberate this time, not accidental. Then, one afternoon, a small envelope appeared under my door. My name, just my first name, written in a looping hand I recognized instantly. Inside was a single photo. It was her, maybe 15 years younger, holding a camera to her eye. In the reflection of a shop window behind her, a man stood beside her, broad shoulders, dark hair, the faintest smile. There was something familiar about the man, though I couldn't place it. On the back of the photo, a single line. "You look like him when you think you're not being watched." I sat with that for a while, the paper trembling slightly in my fingers. That evening, I walked to her house. She opened the door before I could knock, as if she'd been waiting. She looked tired, not in the way people do after a long day, but in the way people do when they've decided to stop hiding. "I didn't mean to send that," she said quietly. I almost threw it away. "You didn't," I said. "No." Her eyes drifted past me to the rain-darkened street. "I guess I wanted you to know why this, whatever this is, feels so strange to me." I waited. "That man," she said, nodding toward the photo still in my hand. "He was the first person I ever trusted completely. I was 28. He was complicated, brilliant, funny, impossible. He left before I could understand what I was to him. She folded her arms, like she was bracing herself. You remind me of him. The way you look at things. The way you don't talk until it matters. I'm not him, I said softly. I know, she said, but the words didn't sound convincing, not even to her. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The air felt heavy with something unsaid, as if the room itself was holding its breath. Do you ever think, I said finally, that maybe some people just show up to repeat what others couldn't finish? Her mouth opened slightly, like she wanted to argue, but no words came. Instead, she reached for the photo on the table and turned it over again, tracing the edge of the man's reflection. I used to think love was supposed to be loud, she said after a while. Big gestures, big words. But now I think it's just moments like this, when someone stays. I'm here, I said quietly. I know, she whispered. That's what scares me. She slid the photo back toward me, her fingers brushing mine. The briefest, softest touch, but enough to make the moment tilt. Keep it, she said. Maybe it'll remind you not to stay too long. Her voice didn't tremble this time, but her hand did. And as I walked home under the flickering streetlights, I realized something had changed, not in what was said, but in what couldn't be taken back. The days got shorter after that. Mornings came slow, evenings softer. The air carried that quiet ache of late autumn, the kind that makes you notice how easily light leaves a room. I hadn't seen Elise for a week, though her presence lingered like the aftertaste of something sweet and unfinished. Then one evening, as I locked up the garage, I heard her voice. Got a minute? She stood at the end of the driveway, holding 2 mugs of coffee. Steam curled into the cold air between us. She wore a gray sweater that hung loose around her shoulders, her hair down for once. She looked unguarded. I thought we could talk, she said. No pretending this time. We sat on the porch steps. The sky was low and bruised with fading light. For a while, we didn't talk at all, just sipped quietly, the sound of wind moving through the trees. She was the first to break the silence. You should know, she said softly. I haven't let anyone in my house this much since my divorce. Even friends don't stay long. I wasn't trying to stay, I said. I just didn't leave. That made her smile, faint but real. You have a way of doing that, being around without asking for anything. I could say the same about you. She turned to look at me then, her expression caught somewhere between gratitude and apology. You make it sound simple. It's not, I said. I know. The quiet that followed wasn't the careful kind anymore. It felt like a shared breath, heavy, alive. I keep wondering, she said after a while, what people would think if they saw us like this. You, me, sitting here like it means something. I shrugged. Maybe it does. Her eyes softened, and something shifted between us. Not sudden, not sharp, just inevitable. You shouldn't have to carry my ghosts, she whispered. I don't mind the weight, I said. She looked away, blinking too quickly. You talk like you mean that. I do. For the first time, she didn't correct me, didn't build a wall with words. She just set her mug down and leaned her elbows on her knees, staring out into the dark yard. Then maybe, she said quietly, we stop trying to name what this is. A wind moved across the porch, cool against our faces. I watched her reach up and tuck her hair behind her ear, a small, unthinking gesture. Without really deciding to, I reached out and did the same, my fingers brushing her temple. She didn't pull away. We stayed like that, still, close, suspended. Then she exhaled, slow and trembling, and leaned her forehead against mine. No words, no explanations, just breath, warmth, and the faint hum of something neither of us wanted to end. The world outside kept moving. Cars, wind, the ticking of time, but it felt far away. When she finally pulled back, she smiled, small and tired and honest. Let's just sit, she whispered. So we did. 2 people who had spent months pretending, now saying nothing at all, because silence finally felt like the truth. It's strange, looking back now, how quietly everything changed. There was no grand confession, no dramatic ending, just a slow unwinding of walls we didn't realize we'd built. Elise still lives next door. Some mornings we wave from our porches like we used to, like we're pretending again, but we both know we're not. The pretending's over. What's left is something softer, realer. I don't fix things for her anymore, at least not as often. She doesn't call for help unless she actually needs it. Sometimes she brings over tea instead of coffee, and we sit on her back steps, talking about the small stuff, the kind that fills a life when you stop running from it. I've learned that love, if that's what this is, doesn't always look like the movies. It's not fireworks or music swelling in the background. Sometimes it's a quiet evening in a messy kitchen. Sometimes it's knowing when to leave a silence alone. For her, I think it meant remembering how to be seen without explaining herself. For me, it meant realizing you can care for someone without needing to own what it becomes. We never talked about the night on the porch, the candle, the closeness, that quiet collapse into something neither of us could name. We didn't have to. It changed everything by not asking for more. Now, when I see her tending the lemon tree in the morning light, I understand what she meant that first day, about pretending life's fine. It's not about pretending anymore. It's about accepting that fine is enough, and sometimes, enough is what love actually looks like. A few weeks ago, she handed me one of her old photographs. It was of the lemon tree, before it ever bore fruit. "You should keep it," she said. "Reminds me of how things take their time." It sits on my nightstand now, right beside my keys and a cup that's always half full of cold coffee. I look at it sometimes before heading out to work, not because it's beautiful, but because it's proof that small things grow when you stop trying to make them hurry. I don't know what happens next, with her, with me, with whatever it is we built in that silence. But maybe that's the point. Not every story needs a perfect ending. Some just need to breathe. If you've ever had someone who changed you quietly, without asking to, maybe you understand. Maybe love doesn't always arrive to stay. Sometimes, it just passes through to teach you how to see yourself differently. And maybe that's enough. If this story lingered with you, tell me why. I'd like to know what part stayed.